If you've ever looked at every overpowered isekai protagonist and thought, this guy thinks way too highly of himself, well, the Eminence in Shadow just made that the entire premise, and somehow it's one of the most entertaining anime in recent memory. Cid Kagenou is a man who reincarnated into a fantasy world for the sole purpose of playing pretend as a secret shadow ruler, only to accidentally build an actual secret shadow empire that fights an actual ancient demon cult that he genuinely believes is fictional. All 20 episodes of Season 1 are an absolute ride, so buckle up. We open in modern-day Japan, where Akane Nishino is a beloved actress and model student whose cheerful public persona is a carefully constructed lie, concealing deep anger and bitterness, the emotional wreckage left by a traumatic kidnapping and assault by an obsessive fan. The one person she particularly despises is her unremarkable classmate Minoru Kagenou, who can barely remember her name, let alone acknowledge her existence. What Nishino doesn't know is that Kagenou is secretly a deranged martial arts obsessive who carries weights in his clothes to build superhuman strength, driven by a lifelong dream of becoming a masked vigilante mastermind operating from the shadows. When Nishino is kidnapped by criminals looking to ransom her, Kagenou crashes the scene in a balaclava disguise, calling himself the stylish ruffian slayer, and proceeds to absolutely demolish two grown criminals with dual-wielded crowbars. It turns out he's already well known in the criminal underworld as the balaclava berserker. He frees a stunned Nishino, who begins to suspect Kagenou is responsible for her rescue. A few days later, in the most anticlimactic death possible for a would-be shadow hero, Kagenou is abruptly hit by a truck and killed. Through an extended flashback, we learn the full scope of Kagenou's obsession. His entire life was dedicated to becoming an untouchable secret mastermind, training relentlessly in martial arts in hopes of overcoming even the laws of physics. A dream he ultimately admits was impossible in the real world, no matter how hard he tried. Reincarnated into a magical fantasy world, Kagenou is reborn as Cid Kagenou, son of minor nobles in the kingdom of Midgar, training in secret and moonlighting as a vigilante killing bandits. His big break comes when he discovers a rotting blob of flesh in the wilderness, experiments on it, and cures the curse afflicting it, revealing a stunning elven girl. Cid spins her an elaborate fabricated backstory. She is a descendant of ancient heroes, a demon called Diablos, is being resurrected by a sinister cult, and she must join his organization Shadow Garden to fight it. The girl, whom Cid names Alpha, believes every word and falls deeply in love with him. 3 years later, Alpha has recruited 6 more girls, Beta, Gamma, Delta, Epsilon, Zeta, and Eta, into the Shadow 7. And when Cid's sister Claire is kidnapped, they locate her and confirm the cult of Diablos is real. A fact Cid remains completely oblivious to, genuinely believing he is fighting ordinary bandits in a very elaborate roleplay scenario. Cid leads the attack and the cultists are decimated, Claire escapes, and Shadow Garden departs to hunt the cult across the world, while Cid assumes they simply grew bored of the game. Cid enrolls at Midgar Academy, the same school his sister Claire now attends, deliberately cultivating friendships with 2 thoroughly average boys named Skell and Poe to blend into the background. His carefully crafted low profile is spectacularly disrupted when, as punishment for poor test performance, he is forced to publicly make a fake love confession to Princess Alexia, a notoriously prideful and status-conscious member of the royal family. Cid plays along as part of his background character performance, but is blindsided when Alexia actually agrees to be his girlfriend. not out of affection, but because she wants to use him as a tool for petty revenge against her fiancé, royal fencing instructor Zenon, whom she has no desire to marry. After 2 weeks of their arrangement, Alexia confesses to Cid that despite her dedication to swordsmanship, she has always lived in the shadow of her prodigiously skilled sister Iris and has been mockingly dubbed Fencer Ordinaire. Cid, completely sincerely, tells her he admires her sword style for its mastery of fundamentals, which only infuriates the prideful Alexia further, and she ends their fake relationship. The very next day, Zenon announces Alexia has vanished and has Cid arrested as the prime suspect. While Cid is locked in a dungeon cell, Alexia is being held by a cult scientist in a facility nearby, her blood drawn for research because it apparently carries demon DNA. She's thrown in a cell next to a grotesquely mutated human girl. Cid is subjected to 5 days of brutal torture by knights demanding he reveal Alexia's location, but since he has quite literally trained himself to endure extraordinary pain, he is eventually released on Princess Iris's orders. Alpha then reappears and gives Cid a briefing. Shadow Garden has been growing dramatically in scope and power while continuing to monitor the cult. Cid is deeply touched that Alpha and the others still visit to maintain their roleplay game with him, completely unaware that Shadow Garden is a functioning, expanding secret organization. Alpha deploys 114 loyal soldiers in a massive rescue operation for Alexia. Cid plays along believing it's an elaborate bit of fun, kills the knights who tortured him without breaking a sweat. And in the chaos, the cult scientist desperately injects Alexia's blood into the mutant girl, who transforms into a full demon, kills the scientist, and frees a bewildered Alexia just in time for her to cross paths with Zenon, who coldly reveals he sold her out to the cult in exchange for a promotion within the Knights of Round. Zenon easily overpowers Alexia's retaliatory attack, and then Cid arrives. Zenon drops the pretense and reveals he is one of the cult's core members, identifying Cid as the man behind recent attacks on the cult's operations. Across the city, the demon girl rampages and clashes with Princess Iris, and Alpha appears, identifies herself to Iris as a member of Shadow Garden, defeats the demon with a single overwhelming strike, and vanishes before Iris can react. Shadow presses Zenon to the breaking point, forcing him to swallow pills that trigger a partial demonic transformation and spike his power. In response, Cid deploys the technique he has fantasized about since childhood. Using the principles of a nuclear explosion, he sets off a magical atomic bomb that obliterates Zenon at the atomic level and leaves a massive crater where much of the now evacuated city once stood. In the aftermath, Princess Alexia is shaken and awed, having witnessed a sword style that perfectly embodied the ideal she has spent her life searching for. Freshly motivated, she tries to make their fake relationship real, and when Cid flatly rejects her, she violently punishes him for it. Alpha departs to investigate a group that has been impersonating Shadow Garden to commit crimes. Iris launches a kingdom-wide investigation into both the cult and Shadow Garden. The fake Shadow Garden continues its crime spree, drawing heat onto the real organization. Princess Iris entrusts a recovered cult relic to the pink-haired researcher, Sherry, the kingdom's foremost academic expert on such artifacts, and the adoptive daughter of the Academy's vice principal, Ruslan. Cid's friends Poe and Skell drag him to a grand new department store, where Cid discovers, with mild amusement, that his subordinate Gamma has opened a massive retail chain spanning every major city in the known world to fund Shadow Garden's operations. He also meets New, the newest named member of Shadow Garden. On his way home, he intercepts Alexia being attacked by hired murderers, calmly slaughters them, and hands the survivor over to New for interrogation. Meanwhile, the murderer's employer, a sinister figure called the Gaunt Knight, confirms his men have located the relic Sherry is researching. In a lighter subplot, Cid, Poe, and Skell try their luck confessing to girls with store-bought chocolates. Skell gets beaten up by his target's fiancé, and Cid just hands his remaining chocolates to the nearest person, who happens to be Sherry. Her naive adoptive father, Ruslan, informs her the chocolates were almost certainly a love confession and encourages her not to keep the poor boy waiting. New reports to Cid that the captured murderer was a typical cult foot soldier, an orphan brainwashed through drugs and dark magic. One such brainwashed soldier, Rex, is actively on a mission in the city. Cid barely registers any of this, however, because his friends Skell and Poe have secretly entered him in the Academy's sword tournament to help them impress girls. And New, misreading his distracted muttering about the festival preparations, concludes he is strategically plotting to neutralize Rex. At the festival, Cid duels student council, President Rose, a princess of the neighboring kingdom of Oriana. Playing his beloved background character role, he feigns injury repeatedly, but keeps staggering back to his feet after every strike, impressing Rose with what she interprets as incredible fighting spirit. The referee awards the match to Rose, who is genuinely moved. Sherry approaches Cid to propose they start as friends before considering anything romantic, though Cid has completely forgotten who she is and decides it's easier to just avoid her. Events take a dark turn when Gaunt Knight erects an anti-magic barrier over the Academy, enabling the fake Shadow Garden to seize the building. When Rose and Cid's classroom is attacked, Rose finds herself severely weakened without access to her magic, and Cid recklessly charges in, takes a serious wound, and goes down. Cid later admits the whole thing was a calculated performance to look heroic and cool. Rose, predictably, misinterprets it as an act of self-sacrifice born from love. With the students corralled in the auditorium and Cid's body left behind in the classroom, Cid quietly heals himself and begins moving through the occupied school, systematically eliminating terrorists. Rex corners Sherry to steal the relic, but Princess Iris's Crimson Knights intervene and help her escape. Cid intercepts Sherry and keeps her safe as they regroup. She identifies the relic generating the anti-magic barrier as the Eye of Avarice, a device that absorbs ambient magic and detonates catastrophically once full, and deduces the cult is using it to kill the next generation of knights before they can become a threat. The relic she's been researching turns out to be the Eye's control unit, which could theoretically stop the explosion. With tools needed from Sherry's room, Cid volunteers to retrieve them, all while Gaunt Knight grows suspicious that the real Shadow Garden may be operating inside the Academy. In a quiet, emotional beat, Shadow Garden operative New discovers that the last surviving Crimson Knight is Marco, her former fiancé. Cid orders the shadows to stand down until Sherry is ready with the control relic. Sherry successfully activates the control relic, shutting down the Eye of Avarice and dropping the anti-magic barrier. Cid arrives in full shadow regalia, and Shadow Garden floods the building, cutting down every remaining terrorist. Cid tracks down Gaunt Knight, destroying Sherry's research, and unmasks him. He is Ruslan, the vice principal and Sherry's adoptive father. Ruslan explains his entire backstory. Once an elite swordsman, he was crippled by illness, and in his obsession with using the Eye of Avarice to restore himself, he befriended the woman studying it, Sherry's mother, and when her nerve failed and she tried to abandon the project, he murdered her and adopted Sherry purely as a means to complete the research in her mother's place. He combines the Eye and the Control Relic to regain his old swordsmanship, and discovers, mid-duel with Cid, that even fully restored, he is still hopelessly outmatched. Ruslan brags that he has framed Shadow Garden for every crime committed in the city. Cid, entirely unbothered, kills him, and a traumatized Sherry witnesses the killing blow. In the aftermath, the kingdom officially designates Shadow Garden as a terrorist organization. Sherry quietly informs Cid she is transferring to a scientific research academy to pursue a new personal goal, and while she seems sad to leave him, the dark, ominous aura surrounding her words suggests her new goal is far from benign. Alpha contacts Cid and requests he travel to the sacred city of Lindworm to attend the prestigious goddess trial. Meanwhile, Beta, Epsilon, and Nu are separately dispatched on Lindworm-related missions. In a revealing flashback, we learn that after the incident at the academy, Cid faked a miraculous recovery from his wound, convincing everyone he somehow survived against all odds. Rose, who now believes his wound was an act of love, has resolved to honor what she perceives as his feelings, and hopes that if Cid wins the goddess trial, her father might approve of them marrying. Cid, on the other hand, thinks Rose is aggressively trying to convert him to the religion of the goddess Beatrix, and resolves to dodge her, rather than directly push her away. In the city itself, Cid runs into Beta operating under her famous author persona Natsume, whose best-selling novels are all classic stories from his past life: Cinderella, Romeo and Juliet, Star Wars. Beta passes Cid his mission briefing in an ancient coded language, which impresses him enormously as what he thinks is an exceptionally clever roleplay prop. The episode ends grimly when a cultist assassinates Archbishop Drake of Beatrix's church, with one of his men killed by Epsilon before the murderer escapes into the city. Cid wanders into a hot spring and stumbles into the same bath as a startled Alexia, who composes herself and explains the mechanics of the goddess trial. Challengers duel manifested spirits of legendary warriors, with the quality of the summoned spirit reflecting the challenger's own worth as a warrior. Alexia's investigation is then abruptly shut down by interim Archbishop Nelson, whom she immediately suspects of orchestrating Drake's murder himself. In a wonderfully petty encounter, Beta, as Natsume, and Alexia cross paths and instantly develop a mutual, deep dislike of each other. At the goddess trial, challengers are publicly humiliated as no spirits manifest to face them, suggesting they are deemed unworthy opponents until Cid's name is unexpectedly called, his entry fee having been secretly paid by Rose to showcase his potential to her father. To avoid both exposing his abilities and the equal embarrassment of faking a bad loss, Cid does the only sensible thing. He crashes the trial as the Eminence in shadow, and his presence is so overwhelming that it summons Aurora, the Calamity Witch, historically the most powerful witch ever recorded, as his opponent. Cid defeats Aurora, but finds the duel disappointingly easy and departs, only for the arena barrier to collapse and a summoning portal to lock onto him and begin following him through the city, baffling and impressing the watching Shadow Garden. Alpha drops a major revelation. She is an elf and a direct descendant of Olivier, the ancient hero who severed Diablos's left arm 1,000 years ago, which means the fabricated backstory Cid invented for her was accidentally true in almost every meaningful detail. Cid steps into the summoning portal following him and finds himself transported to a mysterious dimension called the Sanctuary. Alpha leads the rest of Shadow Garden in after him. Princess Alexia and Rose also follow. Inside, Cid encounters Aurora herself, not the spirit manifestation, but the original consciousness. After Cid frees her, Aurora explains that the Sanctuary is a vast magical prison containing the recorded memories of every past hero, and destroying its magical core would erase her and every stored consciousness within it. Shadows learn the full horror of the cult's history. They used the Sanctuary for centuries to conduct brutal experiments on orphaned girls, injecting them with Diablo's blood in attempts to resurrect him. Most subjects died. A rare few, like Olivier, survived and became legendary heroes. The experiments on Diablo's severed arm also produced the demonic transformation pills seen earlier in the season. Perhaps most significantly, the arm produces 12 beads per year, each one granting 1 year of immortality, which are distributed among the cult's 12 ruling leaders, the Knights of Round. One of those knights is Nelson himself, who helped create the very first beads a millennium ago. Nelson turns demonic, seizes control of the Sanctuary, scatters every member of the group through separate memory archives, and unleashes an army of his own copies to fight all the shadows simultaneously. With everyone split up and surrounded, Epsilon reveals a foundational truth about Shadow Garden. She and the other named shadows were all girls who survived the cult's experiments on them. and it was Cid who personally found and cured each of them of the demonic and cursed side effects, leaving behind only their extraordinary physical power. The group navigates to the sanctuary's archive and steals the cult's complete experimental records. Delta, seemingly the most unhinged of the Shadow Seven, reveals she possesses raw berserker-level strength and proceeds to demolish hundreds of Nelson's demonic copies through sheer physical violence without using any magic at all. Cid and Aurora, meanwhile, reach the sanctuary's core, which is sealed behind chains that can only be cut by a magic sword, a sword that can only be wielded by a hero's descendant. Before Cid can find a workaround, Nelson summons a manifested Olivier to kill him. All the shadows, along with Alexia and Rose, are suddenly teleported out of the sanctuary by Epsilon, leaving Cid alone inside with Nelson and a silent Olivier. Olivier fights with technical perfection but no soul, no personality, no genuine will, and Cid finds that kind of hollow competence boring. Aurora, deeply moved by Cid's kindness in freeing her and giving her new memories after 1,000 years of isolation, resolves to protect him. Cid, mildly irritated that she assumes he is losing, announces he has figured out a secret about the sanctuary, right as Olivier drives a blade clean through his chest, and Cid smiles. With a sword through his chest and Nelson gloating, Cid calmly reveals the full picture. He deliberately allowed Olivier to stab him in a precise location that missed every vital organ. And the secret he discovered about the sanctuary is that it constantly absorbs ambient magic from the air, meaning that by compressing his entire magical output into a single dense, inert mass stored within his own eye, he shielded it from the sanctuary's drain and can now release it all at once. He grabs Olivier, bites through her coronoid arteries to put her down, and then detonates his atomic bomb spell, obliterating Nelson and the sanctuary's core in a single catastrophic blast. With the sanctuary collapsing around them, Cid bids farewell to Aurora, who kisses him and expresses hope that someday he might find her real, physical self somewhere in the world. Outside, a shaken Princess Alexia and Rose each independently decide they need to form their own secret organization to resist both the cult and Shadow Garden, and Beta, ever the spy, cheerfully agrees to help them. Back in the real world, Alpha reviews the sanctuary's stolen archives and makes a devastating discovery. Aurora's true identity is Diabolos. The demon they have been fighting to prevent from being resurrected was imprisoned within the sanctuary the entire time, and Cid just set her free. Elsewhere, Shadow Garden quietly moves to purchase all the real estate in the city of Madlid under the cover of opening another shopping center, with the real objective being access to a valuable oil field underneath. Rose, meanwhile, discovers she may be carrying a demonic blood infection. The Bushin Festival arrives at the royal capital, drawing elite warriors from across the world. Cid's plan for the tournament is characteristically absurd. He will enter in deep disguise as a pathetically weak and unimpressive fighter, then defeat every opponent with such effortless ease that the contrast becomes legendary, a performance entirely for his own entertainment. Gamma provides him with magical slime-based makeup that transforms his face into that of mundane man, a historically unremarkable knight who died in obscurity and poverty. A foreign warrior named Anaros, who previously competed at the goddess trial, witnesses Mundane apparently being beaten by a fighter named Quinton in a street encounter before the festival begins, and is deeply unsettled to notice that Cid is completely uninjured despite all appearances. During the preliminary rounds, the loudly arrogant and self-important Goldie Gilded is humiliated when his confident prediction about match outcomes is upended by Mundane winning a fight so quickly and subtly that almost no one can tell what happened, because the sharp-eyed Anaros catches that Mundane moved and finished the fight before it technically began. Goldie, his pride stinging, publicly announces Mundane as his next opponent. The episode ends on a jolt. Rose has stabbed Perv Asshat and vanished. Alexia moves to find and protect Rose, but Beta skillfully stalls her, already knowing Rose is hiding in the city's labyrinthine underground ruins and working on her own timetable. Cid encounters an elf named Beatrix, who is searching for her missing niece. As mundane, Cid faces Goldie in the first proper tournament duel, with Anaros and Quentin watching closely and already suspicious. Mundane dodges Goldie's opening strike by subtly flexing his neck muscles, then causes Goldie's own unleashed magical attack to explode backward into him by sneezing at precisely the right moment, sending him unconscious to the arena floor. The crowd and Anaros are baffled. In a parallel political thread, Princess Iris visits Perv Ashat and discovers Rose didn't injure him at all, and observes that Perv appears to hold a sinister, almost supernatural influence over Rose's father, the King of Oriana. The tournament rolls on. Mundane defeats Quentin next, setting up Anaros as his following opponent, and she attempts to unsettle him with intimidation, until Mundane cheerfully mentions that the armor he is wearing weighs over a ton, yet he still moves faster than anyone in the arena can track. Cid's sister Claire arrives in the capital to watch the festival, immediately searching for her brother. Cid has a genuine quiet respect for Rose's defiance, admiring that she risked everything rather than submit to a marriage she didn't want. Wandering the city, Cid hears the Moonlight Sonata, his personal favorite piece of music from his past life, and follows the sound to find Epsilon performing it on a grand piano. Underground in the ancient ruins beneath the city, Rose is deteriorating, her demonic blood infection worsening, and she contemplates surrendering to end the political fallout she is causing. Then she hears the sonata echoing through the stone passages and follows it to a massive underground chamber where the Eminence in shadow sits alone. The moment cuts through Rose's despair. She realizes she cannot give up. Cid cures her blood infection and grants her power before vanishing without ceremony. Rose cuts ties with Alexia and Beta to avoid dragging them into her problems. Beta quietly concludes this was Cid's intention all along. Cid arrives home to find Claire has been fuming in his room all day. Claire, having had an entire day to build up to it, punishes Cid with extreme enthusiasm before revealing that she has stepped in as Rose's replacement in the Bushin Festival tournament and is demanding Cid watch her from the VIP seating. Cid takes his seat in the VIP box next to Iris, who briefly and awkwardly apologizes for the Xenon incident. Their conversation turns to the tournament's dark horse, the mysterious Dark Knight competitor revealed to be Beatrix. Cid quietly puts together that she must be Alpha's aunt, the elf searching for her missing niece. Cid slips away to pull on his mundane disguise for his scheduled duel with Anaros. In the VIP box, Perv takes a seat beside Iris, who visibly despises him. He makes a show of confidence that Rose will return and agree to the marriage. In the arena, Anaros pushes herself to match Mundane's speed and is handily defeated, the loss redoubling Iris's resolve to beat him herself in the next round. Perv orders Mundane investigated, though he dismisses the possibility of any connection to Shadow Garden. They're all women. Anaros, gracious in defeat, thanks Mundane for showing her she still has room to grow and offers him a government position. He declines. Cid is already looking ahead with glee, planning to defeat Iris dramatically and then vanish without explanation, until he walks back to his room and finds Claire there, quietly noting that he didn't watch her match. Cid takes his VIP seat between Iris and Beatrix to watch Claire's match, doing his best to look attentive. Behind the scenes, Perv continues his quiet campaign. He is drugging the King of Oriana to deepen his control, banking on Rose attempting a rescue that will force her hand on the marriage. Claire wins her match convincingly and immediately charges off to find Cid in the audience, who is, once again, already gone. Iris duels Mundane on the arena floor, and it is clear from the start that something is very wrong. Iris experiences repeated, visceral premonitions of Mundane killing her instantly the moment she lowers her guard, a terrifying, instinctive read from her exceptional combat experience that she cannot logically explain. Mundane disarms and defeats her with a single move. In the VIP box, the crisis breaks. Rose infiltrates the area with Shadow Garden's assistance, and with the help of the controlled king, who, in a heartbreaking moment, shows gratitude at finally being freed from Perv's magical grip as Rose strikes him down. Perv is suddenly flanked and exposed. But Rose turns the blade on herself next, unwilling to live as a fugitive who just killed her own father. Mundane stops her, kill Perv's guards, and shed his disguise, revealing himself as the Eminence in shadow. Rose realizes that the Eminence is also stylish bandit slayer, the masked boy who killed a group of bandits when she was a child, an encounter that unknowingly inspired her entire swordsmanship journey. Realizing she still has reasons to live and a path to walk, Rose flees. Beatrix, who has been quietly burning to fight Mundane since their first encounter, realizes Shadow is a declared enemy of the kingdom and immediately engages him. Alpha intercepts Rose in the city and offers her membership in Shadow Garden, and Rose, with nothing left to her old life, accepts. Back in the capital's streets, the duel between Shadow, Beatrix, and a furious Princess Iris rapidly escalates across the city in a spectacular, wide-ranging battle. Shadow once again brandishes his city-obliterating atomic spell, and for a brief, terrifying moment, both Iris and Beatrix genuinely believe he will detonate it, before he vanishes at the last second, leaving the pair alive but seething, Iris more determined than ever to bring him down. Perv crawls to his master to beg forgiveness for his spectacular failure. In a quietly chilling final scene, Sherry, holed up in a room now wallpapered with wanted posters of the Eminence in shadow, hears news of his latest attack and reaffirms, with a terrifying calm and a dark aura, her personal promise to one day kill him. With the Eminence now fully known to the world at large, Shadow Garden begins major internal preparations to support Cid on a much larger scale. Alpha leads Rose deep into the mountains near Cid and Claire's childhood village, the site of the old Kingdom of Alexandria, now Shadow Garden's hidden base of operations. There, in a deliberate ritual of reinvention, everything is stripped from Rose, her name, her clothes, and even the last memento she carried of Cid as she once knew him. The season closes on Cid alone in the underground of the capital, playing the Moonlight Sonata on his stolen piano, deeply satisfied with how his role play is going, completely unaware that every piece on the board around him is real, alive, and moving with deadly purpose.